So sorry, Pittsburgh Steelers fans, but the bus stops here. Exit stage left. See you later in 2025. The Baltimore Ravens take care of business against the Pittsburgh Steelers in the wild card round and now have to travel to Buffalo, New York to take on Josh Allen and the Buffalo Bills. We touch on all of that and more next on Ravens Talk.
Look, this the Raven Talk, this the Raven Talk, this the Raven Talk podcast. Follow us on Instagram, on YouTube for the broadcast. Say this the Raven Talk, this the Raven Talk, this the Raven Talk podcast. Not old news, this is new news to the whole world where they ball at. Come and listen to the former writer for the Baltimore Sports Illustrated.
The MVP race was the topic of discussion for a majority of the second half of the NFL season with Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen going head to head. It looks like Lamar Jackson is getting his third MVP trophy, but he'll have to go against the runner-up in the AFC Divisional round of the postseason. Welcome to Ravens Talk. I'm your host, Samuel Njoku. We'll talk about that game, Bills-Ravens. Oh man, social media has been ablazing with both of the fan bases going at it. We'll touch on what the Ravens have to do to get the job done and what may be against them if the Buffalo Bills were to kind of kick it up a notch. We'll also touch on the Ravens-Steelers game because that game has been a topic of conversation on the Steelers side, because their season's over, so they have much to talk about in that regard with Mike Tomlin and what have you. We'll touch on what the Ravens did to spread that conversation because the Ravens went ahead and trounced them a great deal. We'll also look ahead at the injury report. There's a player specifically that has not practiced for a long time, and his absence has left doubt about whether or not he'll be actually playing in the divisional round. I think you know who I'm talking about. We'll touch on it. But first, Ravens take care of business. Wild card round, M&T Bank Stadium. It was rocking at M&T Bank Stadium. Fans have still got on social media and they like to talk about the game, defeating the Pittsburgh Steelers 28-14. I mean, we're not going to spend much time talking about this. We talked about it last episode. I got a lot of grief from Pittsburgh Steelers fans about the Steelers owning the Ravens and Lamar Jackson chokes in the playoffs. None of that happened. What we saw was a dominant performance by Lamar Jackson, Derrick Henry, and his defense defeating the Steelers 28-14. Don't let that score fool you. At one point, it was 21-0 at halftime. At that point, the Ravens were just trying to run out the clock, get out of there healthy, and move on to the divisional round. And that's exactly what they did. The Pittsburgh Steelers had no answers for Derrick Henry and Lamar Jackson. If you're a fan of the show, I'm sure you've seen pivotal moments on YouTube where I touch on what exactly went down with that running attack and how Lamar Jackson was the focal point for that Pittsburgh Steelers defense, much to the chagrin of Steelers fans as Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry went toe-to-toe with just beating the living crap out of them. Derrick Henry, of course, had a huge game, monster game, 2 touchdowns, including the last nail in the coffin, you could say, when he zipped on Patrick Roquan, went down the middle of that defense and scored a touchdown. I mean, you've never seen a Steelers defense look this poor. I'm sure that's why Pittsburgh Steelers fans are conversating with their peers, getting on the radio shows or whatever, talk about firing Mike Tomlin, which I think is ridiculous. I mean, this isn't Steelers talk, so we don't have to get into it, but firing Mike Tomlin when your real area of concern is that roster and that quarterback there that you try to pitch out against Patrick Mahomes and Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen. Come on. There's tiers to this. There's levels to this. And the Steelers are a couple of tiers below the Ravens, as we plainly saw on Wild Card Weekend. But it's not all about the Ravens offense. The defense played very well as well. This team led by Odafe Owe, Nnamdi Madubuike, Calvin Oy continue to do work for this team. Ever since that play shift with Kyle Hamilton moving in the back end, this defense is locked in. We've seen more and more of that. There have been some concerns. A lot of talk headed towards Brandon Stevens. Even John Harbaugh had to ask her a question about that. But all in all, no defense is 100%. It's not going to be perfect. This cap space makes it so that every team has a hole in their game. And clearly the hole this year is around Brandon Stevens. Now, is he playing as poorly as people are making it out to be? I don't think so. I think it's just a case of who are you going to throw it to? Are you going to throw it to Brandon Stevens, who's had struggles locating the football? Or are you going to throw it to all-pro Marlon Humphrey, to rookie sensation Nate Wiggins, Kyle Hamilton, whenever he plays dime? Are you going to throw it to those guys? No, you're going to throw it to Brandon Stevens, who's a born-again safety / running back in some aspects. So he's still learning the position. I don't know his regression, if it carries over to next year. The Ravens will have to talk about that when it gets there. But of course, he has some struggles in that aspect. A lot of that is because the Ravens were playing a prevent style defense. And I hate prevent defense. I hate it. If you're going to beat us, beat us. Don't beat the scheme that we're throwing out there just because we have an insurmountable lead. Go out there and play football for 60 minutes. Play your game plan and let the chips fall where they may. That's my thought on it. Doesn't really matter. Ravens get the job done, defeating, dominating, destroying the Pittsburgh Steelers. And that has to feel good. It has to feel good if you're a Ravens fan, you're a Ravens player, coach, whatever. If you're in that building, if you're part of that organization, taking it to the Pittsburgh Steelers has to be a monumental achievement. It just has to feel amazing. Now, they can't hang on their laurels too often, or too long, I should say. Huge game upcoming against the Buffalo Bills and potentially a rematch with the Kansas City Chiefs there to make it out of the divisional round. But just from me personally, having covered this team for as many years as I've had, I've been in that press conference after a Steelers loss in the postseason, seeing a team defeat you, dashing your hopes for winning a championship, and having that conversation in that facility about how we're going to beat the Steelers finally. Well, you get Lamar Jackson, Derrick Henry, that certainly helps. And the Ravens have turned the corner, and now the narrative that the Steelers own the Ravens, flush it in the toilet. Throw it away. The Ravens defeated them by 17 points in Week 16 and 14 points, a little bit more in Week wildcard round. I don't know why I said Week wildcard round. In the wildcard round. The Ravens dominated the Steelers. Is what I'm trying to say. 6 field goals kicked by the Steelers in the first meeting, gave them the win. I assume for some reason the Steelers knocked their head against the wall, went cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs, and thought that was enough to defeat this red-hot team a second and third time around. Obviously, it wasn't the case. We talked about it ad nauseum last week about how this Ravens team is going to be well-equipped to handle this Steelers team. And even I didn't expect the Ravens to run for 299 against this well-respected Steelers defense, but that's exactly what went down. That's exactly what went down. And wow, kudos to that Ravens coaching staff. Kudos to the players and kudos to the fans. The players have been talking all week about how boisterous this Ravens fan base was in that contest. Pure playoff atmosphere. You could tell Ravens still have a shot to host another playoff game this year if the Texans were to beat the Chiefs. Bit of a long shot, but still a chance. And of course, the Ravens will need to take care of business against the Buffalo Bills. When we return, we touch on the matchup. Buffalo Bills, Baltimore Ravens. MVP against MVP runner-up. What a game. Fan bases going at it. They know the narrative will be shifted monstrously, negatively towards the loser of this one. Neither team can afford to lose because if you lose, you go home. We touch on why I think the Ravens win or lose next on Ravens Talk. Welcome back to Ravens Talk. The Ravens Bills are about to go at it. Divisional round. Winner moves on, punches their ticket to the AFC Championship game. Loser goes home. I mean, it doesn't get any better than that. Two of the best quarterbacks in the NFL this year. In my opinion, 1 and 2 with Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen. Only one gets an opportunity to fight for a shot at the Lombardi Trophy. It is going to be quite the game. I mean, hype alone has me very intrigued for this game. If you heard me on social media, you know that I was hoping that this matchup came into fruition. And a lot of it because the fan bases have gone at it since the MVP talks really took off with Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson. And I've been the guy who has at times gone on social media and pleaded the case in favor of Lamar. And it seems like cooler heads have prevailed. Lamar Jackson becoming first team All-Pro QB. It looks like he is a lock to get that third MVP trophy, and he deserves it. And this isn't a knock on Josh Allen. Josh Allen has had a phenomenal season. I mean, he has done some phenomenal work with less weapons than Lamar Jackson. No one can say otherwise. I mean, that's the case. But are we going to fault Lamar Jackson? Are we going to show a disservice to his performance because the Ravens GM is better than the Bills GM? Are we going to do that? So no, I don't think that's fair. And the statistics are way leaps and bounds, way better than Josh Allen. I think if the statistics were a little closer, I'd say, okay, maybe Josh Allen deserves it because he's doing the same thing Lamar is doing, but with less talent. But that's not the case. Lamar is cruising in multiple categories, and that has earned him his first team All-Pro and likely a third MVP trophy. But we ain't here to talk about MVPs. That's an award that no one cares about. Certainly not Lamar Jackson. This is about a chance to right or wrong. And the only way to do that is to beat the Buffalo Bills. Do the Ravens get the job done? Let's look at the matchups, because at the end of the day, storylines, narratives, wishfulness, it all comes down to X's and O's. X's and O's, and then willingness to trust your coaching staff and use your talents to get the job done. So, without further ado, let's get into it, because I know fans have been looking forward to this for a few days now, and finally going to give you the rundown of what I think is going to happen in this contest. Let's start with the most obvious concern for the Bills, their defense. It is not set up to stop the run. It's not. Of course, the Bills were without Milano in that first meeting in week 4. They're out their nickel cornerback in week 4. They're out their other linebacker in week 4 as well. So it wasn't like the Bills were fully equipped and ready to handle this Ravens offensive attack. Does that matter? Not really. Not really. And when it comes down to it, the Bills still play a certain style of defense. And we talked about this back when the matchup was first started back in week 4. The Bills play a very basic style of defense. They leave 4 guys to rush the quarterback or rush the running back, whoever, and they keep the other 7 guys back there. The Bills run cover 3 more than anybody. All about cover 2, all about cover 1, and then a little ways away, cover 4. But the Bills do not like to keep that safety in the box. They don't load the box. They trust their front 4 to get to the running back and get to the quarterback. That's not going to cut it in this game. It's just not. I mean, the proof is in the pudding throughout 18 games for the Ravens. You cannot defeat this team with only 4 players at the front of your line. You need linebackers coming in there, crashing, at least sitting close to the line of scrimmage to decipher the read option situation. Something the Steelers tried to do and failed miserably. And we can all agree that the Bills' defense is not up to par with the Steelers' defense. That's not a knock on the Bills' defense. That's more so showing respect to the Steelers' defense. And I think we can all say that the Bills are lacking in some regards to that defense. They played well their last stretch of games against the Broncos. They definitely held firm, but this is an entirely different beast. Entirely different beast. Excuse me. So, Bills run cover 3 a lot. They cannot run cover 3 in this game. Not their basic form of cover 3. They'll need to have Milano in there in the trenches, being a disruptor. And we talked about this since week 1. You need a disruptor to really have a chance against this defense, this offense, I should say. You need a disruptor to have a chance against this offense. Chiefs have Chris Jones. The Raiders have Max Crosby. The Browns have Myles Garrett. The Steelers have TJ Watt. You need a disruptor at the line of scrimmage to really terrorize the offensive front, especially the interior of this offensive line, which has played well recently. I think this might have been Daniel Faalele's best game in the wild card round. In fact, I know it is. Kyle Linderbaum had a bounce back game after having a poor performance against the Browns in week 18, but you'll need a disruptor to have any shot against this offensive attack, and the Bills do not possess that. Not Milano, not anyone back there, not Von Miller. You don't have it. So to counteract that, you need bodies, and you need to have what's the word I'm looking for? You need to be comfortable playing a solid defense. If you play a solid defense for 19 weeks, and then the next week comes along and you say, okay, well, we got to flip it up. You got to play like the Steelers play. You got to keep bodies in the line of scrimmage. You got to have guys in the box. You got to have one high safety looks at all times. That's not who the Bills are. So that's my area of concern. If you're the Bills, you're very concerned with the way you play defense against an offense like this. Now, the Bills and Ravens have played each other once already, so I'm sure the Bills will have wrinkles in place to try and combat whatever it is that they do. I don't think there's any way possible. And I've heard Bills fans say, oh, you don't know Sean McDermott. He's going to try and play the same. That'd be crazy. You cannot just sit there and watch your defense get destroyed. If you're willfully letting Derrick Henry get to the second level of your defense, play after play after play, you're asking for a butt whooping. So the Bills are going to have to practice and practice hard on playing different. A lot more cover 1. A lot more guys in the box. Load the box. You have no choice. The Ravens have earned the respect to keep guys in the box against their offense. I mean, it's just the way it is. If you don't want to play that style of football, you're going to lose. You're going to lose. So that's the big thing. Can the Ravens find a way and take advantage of that defense? The answer is yes. The Ravens are going to take advantage to play that defense. So it's going to be up to the Bills to play a different style of defense, which is going to be very difficult. We're in the divisional round of the playoffs. This isn't week 4. This is week 6. You are who you are at this point. So it's going to be very interesting to see how the Bills combat that, even with the addition of Milano back into that lineup. I'm sure Milano will have plays. He may be making an open field tackle every once in a while to give the defense that surge, but it comes down to schematics. It comes down to what you decide to do on both sides of the ball. And right now, I don't think that Bills defense is equipped to handle this potent rushing attack of the Ravens. Now, we mentioned it earlier. We have a player that's injured. Zay Flowers hasn't played since that Browns game in Week 18, did not play in the Pittsburgh Steelers game, did not practice, at least as of Wednesday. So his possibility of playing in this upcoming matchup seems to be in doubt. We'll see what happens at game time, but all signs point to another absence for Zay Flowers. So how does that hurt the Ravens? Well, if the Bills get up early on the Ravens, there might have to be some situations where the Ravens are passing on 3rd and long. And you have a Rashod Bateman who is cooked. Don't get me wrong, but if the Bills play the style of defense that they normally do, they're keeping 7 guys back there, which means there's a chance they're doubling Rashod Bateman. They're doubling Mark Andrews. So I think it's going to be important for the Ravens to maneuver motion the way that they did against the Steelers. Maybe have Mark Andrews on one side of the field and Rashod Bateman on the other to limit the amount of time the Bills have to conjure up a backfield where you don't have guys middling in. You don't want to be, if you're the Bills, in a defense where you have to double Mark Andrews on one side and Rashod Bateman on the other, okay? That leaves the middle of the field wide open. You'll see Isaiah Likely, Justice Hill, Keaton Mitchell, getting those targets. So I think the Ravens need to do a good job of spreading the field around and making sure your 2 biggest weapons, which will likely be Rashod Bateman and Mark Andrews, are not too bunched together. Motion Rashod Bateman to the other side. We've seen that a lot and find ways to do it that way. But yeah, Zay Flowers' loss is big. How significant depends on the flow of the game, how this game is going. If, of course, the Ravens get off to a 14-point lead like they did against the Steelers, they could have me out there playing X receiver, and it won't mean much because we'll be tossing that thing to Derrick Henry, and Lamar Jackson will be taking it himself, running down the field. We've seen it time and time again. Nothing will be any different in this one. So that's it for the Bills defense. I think the Bills defense does not match up well with the Ravens offense, and I'm not sure if 6 days or 7 days is enough for the Bills defense to get a handle on how they're going to plan on stopping this rushing attack. We've seen the Steelers who've seen the Ravens 3 times. A Browns team who've seen the Ravens 3 times. Well, twice. The Bengals who've seen the Ravens twice have struggled stopping this rushing attack. The Steelers knew it was coming. The Bengals knew it was coming. The Browns knew it was coming twice. And in the Steelers' case, 3 times, could not stop it. The Bills are seeing them for a second time, but the familiarity from past seasons is not there. It's not there. So I think it's a huge advantage for the Ravens, huge disadvantage for the Bills. Now let's turn over to the other side. The Bills offense, led by one Josh Allen, versus a Ravens defense that has improved mightily. Remember, in week 4, the Ravens were still struggling. Eddie Jackson was still out there. Marcus Williams was getting a large majority of snaps out there at free safety. And the Ravens still found a way to hold that team to 10 points. Now we see a new defense with Kyle Hamilton back there playing a lot less big nickel, more 2 high safety looks for the Ravens. How do the Bills combat this? Well, against the Broncos, they ran the football. And the Broncos defense was formidable prior to this game, but they did not have any chance against this Bills team. Why is that? Why do you think that is? At first, it was 10-7, almost 10-10 at halftime. The Bengals, I keep calling them the Bengals, the Bills and Broncos were going at it unlimited. I mean, just so many opportunities for the Broncos to get out of the lead, to get into a lead, but the Broncos offense just didn't have it. And so when the Bills got off to a 1-score lead, 2-score lead, the Broncos had to start thinking about getting after Josh Allen to kind of keep this game close. Broncos had no shot at stopping the run. Huge game by James Cook. Huge game by Josh Allen. In this contest, it'll be very difficult to run the football. No team has had success. The Ravens have the best run defense in all of football. Excuse me. Best defense in all of football. So how do the Bills combat this? It's going to have to be the Josh Allen show. I've said this all week. Josh Allen's going to have to be the guy to come in and wear that Superman cape. And maybe he'll need two. There's going to be a case where Josh Allen's going to have to run the football early, take eyes away from James Cook, and then once Josh Allen's gotten some positive yardage, once he's taken eyes away from his running back and into his own self, give James Cook some running lanes. I'm playing similar to how the Ravens run their offense. That'll be their only shot. Their only shot on offense to get things going. They could toss the ball, but the way the Ravens play defense, you're going to have to hit throws consistently. You can't give the Ravens a chance to catch up on routes. I know Josh Allen likes to extend plays, and I get nervous thinking about it because Ben Roethlisberger comes to mind and how successful he's been against this Ravens defense over the years, but you're not going to be able to play that solid offense against the Ravens defense. You see what Joe Burrow was able to do against that Ravens defense, even though this was prior to the changes that the Ravens made. Still, he was able to have success by having direct paths to the receivers, by being very decisive in his throws. That's not Josh Allen's game. He's had success now as a passer this year, but a lot of that has to do with him extending plays. When it comes down to it, I think the best way for the Bills to go about this offense, run the football over Josh Allen. Use his body the way the Ravens did in the wild card round, having him rush 15 times. Josh Allen's going to have to run the football early and often to get eyes away from James Cook, because if the focal point is James Cook running the football, not only is James Cook, this Bills offense is cooked. So that's the way it goes. All of this to say, it's going to be a tough game for the Bills. I know the game is in Buffalo. I know the bulletin board material for a lot of these players in Buffalo who are upset probably that Josh Allen didn't get first team All-Pro. They want to show it up to the Ravens fan base and the Ravens team that Josh Allen's the real MVP and all of that. And I get it. And there's some good that can come out of that type of mindset. But when all said and done, the game is the game. And the Bills are not equipped to stop this run. And that is of huge detriment to this team. I don't know if the Ravens have lost the game all year against a team that couldn't at least hold the run. We've seen the stats. The Ravens are undefeated when Derrick Henry runs for over 90 yards. Do you think the Buffalo Bills are going to hold Derrick Henry to under 90 yards? I don't see it. The Bills can shock me. It's the playoffs and anything can happen. But I'm just looking at it from an analyst standpoint, looking at the film, which I've done. I've rarely looked at week 4 film just to look at what I've seen from the Bills the last few weeks. And there's been some good games where Josh Allen has thrown it to his running backs and tight ends, gotten off in open space. They've had some success stopping and running in certain situations, but a lot of those times they're in those heavy, big leads, 14-point leads, 7-point leads, where teams aren't necessarily running the football effectively. That would not be the case against this Ravens team. The Ravens are going to run it, and you got to stop it. And if the Bills don't show any semblance of trying to stop the run, it's over. And this isn't just any run game. This isn't the traditional run game. This isn't about your defensive front pushing the offensive line back enough to close off the gap. Some of that, of course, is football. But the majority of this defensive effort to stop the Ravens is being patient, being decisive, and being accurate in your reads. The Steelers were horrifically inaccurate when it came to who had the football. That last touchdown run by Derrick Henry is simply a case of Lamar Jackson fooling the Steelers to think that he had the football when he didn't. I showed it on pivotal moments. 3 linebackers chased after Lamar Jackson when Derrick Henry clearly had the ball. That's fear. That is fear of Lamar Jackson after a plethora of plays where Lamar Jackson kept it himself and ran it for 5 yards here, 6 yards there. That was the case of Lamar saying, okay, it's not my turn now. Handed it off to Derrick Henry, and he ran into the races. So it's a case of being able to be accurate with your reads, being patient, trusting the guy next to you. That's a lot on the plate of the Bills defense, who, again, for the most part, run a zone defense, 5 yards back from the line of scrimmage, protecting the big play, things of that nature. That's their game. They're not equipped to stop the run. They have the personnel maybe, but do they have the experience to be in this type of environment? Yeah, they played in week 4, but the success wasn't there. What did they do to change things? They haven't done anything since then to change their way of thinking, to change their defensive schematics, to show me that they're prepared for this type of matchup. So I think it's going to be a tall task for the Bills. Again, if the Bills win this game, it's because of one person, number 17, Josh Allen, who was a phenomenal quarterback. He will have to put this team on his back, but he can't play defense. He's not a linebacker. He's not a safety. He's not a defensive tackle. He's a quarterback. So if the Ravens are running the football effectively and keeping the ball away from Josh Allen, this game could be in Buffalo. This game could be in D.C. This game could be in Antarctica. It won't matter. The Ravens will have huge success, and it'll be very difficult for the Bills to win. We'll get my final thoughts coming up next, but I hope you've appreciated these X's and O's. I'm sure there'll be Bills fans in the comments who disagree, and that's okay. Again, the Bills have a shot. I'm not saying the Bills don't have a shot to win it. It'll just be very difficult because of the matchups, which hilariously favors the Baltimore Ravens. Again, when we come back, we'll have final thoughts next on Ravens Talk. Welcome back to Ravens Talk. Again, the Ravens and Bills are meeting head-to-head in the divisional round. All types of bragging rights, and not to mention, the loser goes home. This is what makes the playoffs so special and so infuriating / nerve-wracking for the fans of the National Football League. But we talked about it. The Bills' defense, in my opinion, doesn't appear to be equipped to handle from a philosophical standpoint. The Bills' defense, from a philosophical standpoint, don't seem to be well equipped to handle this rushing attack. A Steelers team that was horrifically beaten by the hands of the Baltimore Ravens are more equipped to handle this rushing defense than the Bills team that is really trying to mask a lot of their deficiencies on the back end by only rushing 4 and keeping guys back to really clog the passing lanes for opposing QBs. That's my thought on it. We'll see on the offensive side. Again, as you mentioned, the Bills offense, they need to run the football, and the Ravens do such a phenomenal job of stopping the run. They trust their DBs on the back end to stop Amari Cooper, Khalil Shakur. These guys are not Jamar Chase, not T. Higgins. I'm not saying they're not great, but it definitely gives the Ravens peace of mind to know they have some decent studs back there with Kyle Hamilton, Nate Wiggins, and Marlon Humphrey to handle those receivers and really focus on stopping James Cook and Josh Allen, something that they did to much success in week 4. But we'll see. My prediction, I think the Ravens win this. I'm not going to say it's going to be a blowout. I will say I expect the Ravens to win by at least, let's call it 12 points. I think the Ravens win 34-22. Could be more. I mean, this is about the matchups. Now, I'm not saying that the pick'em isn't right. You go on Vegas, it's a pick'em right now. People are deciding whether or not it's going to be Josh Allen, whether or not it's going to be Lamar Jackson. And that's because if you have a QB like Lamar, like Patrick, like Josh, like Joe Burrow, it doesn't matter what defense you run. It doesn't matter how well equipped you are to stop the offense. These guys can put the team on their back and make magic happen. Magic could happen at home in Buffalo with a shot at going to the AFC Championship. Would not take that out of the realm of possibility. But just looking at the matchups, looking at what these teams do well, it seems like the Ravens are headed to the AFC Championship. I've been wrong before. I have been wrong before. I'm usually right. So we'll see what happens. Again, thanks guys so much for joining us for Ravens Talk. You're into Fathead. We are doing the giveaway this weekend to give away some decals to a lucky Ravens fan to help celebrate the Ravens' entry into the postseason and their continued success in the postseason. Please head over to my Twitter or my Instagram to get more information on how you can win some decals. And thank you so much for Fathead for sponsoring that giveaway. That's going to do it for us here at Ravens Talk again. Appreciate you guys so much. Buffalo Bills, Baltimore Ravens. It's going to end divisional round weekend, primetime television. You know how the Ravens do on primetime. They're not at home, but they are in Buffalo, and they have the scheme and the players to get the job done. If they do, we'll be talking about an AFC Championship game against either the Houston Texans in Baltimore or a trip to Arrowhead to face Andy Reid, Patrick Mahomes, and the Kansas City Chiefs. The Ravens lose. We'll talk about what went wrong. and how the Ravens could do things better in 2025. But again, I think the Ravens get the job done. We shall see. That's going to do it for Terry Ravens Talk, and I'll see you folks next week.
You gotta replay, you gotta rewind, and people in the grind, and people they shine, and coming first, not last.